JC
Yeah.
Podcast. This is Joseph Johnson with you as always, joined by my friend and author, Henk Kraaijenhof. It's been a long time since we've got to do this together, and I've missed it because I love seeing what you're doing and what you've been up to. You're one of the few people in the world whose work I am very curious about, and I look up to as a model for someone whom I can, learn and take things from to introduce into what I do. So, I mean, it's always a pleasure for me, and it's a big deal for me to get to learn new stuff. So, how have you been, first of all?
Oh, Joseph, I've been very good, very good. Yeah, I'm uh, I'm 68 years old now. I'm what do you call it, pensionado. I mean, the government is taking care of me or something. But in the meanwhile, I've been working harder than ever before, traveling more, reading more, doing more things, having more projects than ever before. So, I've not been taking things easy right now. So,
I
um,
see that. I see that. You've been like all you. I almost would dare say you've been more all over the place now than 10 years ago.
absolutely, absolutely. That's true. That's true. Well, number one, I like to travel and like to go on holiday. This year, I went to Kazakhstan twice, to the Sultanate of Oman, to Italy, to Tuscany for kind of a holidays, visiting friends, learning new stuff. Time to read. I'm working on two books at the same time, not related to sports. One is about cancer, and one is about anti-aging. So it's not related to sports at all. Only, well, there's a little bit of overlap, but not that much. Yeah, so busy traveling to Kazakhstan, working with athletes still, also more athletes, but only on a temporary basis as a consultant. I have one steady athlete for 4 years now. And last week, I got an athlete from St. Kitts, Jason Rogers. He was here for
Okay.
2 weeks. Well, it's a guy who's running 10:01, or he ran 10:01 before, trying to qualify for the Olympics, working with tennis players, you name it, and still active. But for me, there's always three phases in my life. The phase where I collect the information and don't do much with it, collecting and connecting the dots. And then there's a phase of application and trying things if they really work in real life with my athletes. And the third one is basically grabbing all this information, the theoretical knowledge and this experience, put it together and to lecture and to write articles or write books about it. So those three phases. I must say that the borders of those three phases have become more diffuse now. So before it was quite sharply defined, but now I'm doing all three things at the same time. What makes it busy as well. So I'm writing, learning,
Yeah,
and coaching. So yeah,
and it makes it fun too because you can experiment while you're
yeah,
finding things out as you're learning, and then you learn
actually
something
trying.
new and you kind of change it again. And uh, yeah, I similar. I'm not on your level and not writing anything, but yeah, I did a long time of accumulating just information. Then
Yeah,
started to kind of
yeah.
see, a little bit where would this go and how would it work. I was just having a conversation this morning with someone about one section of training, and they have just this bandwidth of knowledge that I don't have. And I was just like, how do you do? I was asking specific questions. How do we apply this in these particular situations? Just in that one area, because I wasn't 100%. I wanted to get a little advice on how I was going to implement. So yeah, I totally relate to that. I'll read something and then I go back to the experts and say, okay, how does this actually work? In real
Yeah,
life.
the expert tell you maybe they tell you how it works. More often than not, they're wrong because they don't
No,
know how it works. And
and
10 years later,
they
somebody
normally
found
don't
another
tell you
mechanism
either.
why it works. So that's that's it.
Yeah,
No,
you're right. You're right. In my
let me
experience,
say
they
this.
never tell me how it actually works.
Exactly, exactly. That's it's a little bit of Richard Feynman who had a statement, the pleasure of finding things out. That basically describes what I did for the last 60 years almost. The pleasure of finding things out, how they work, if they work.
Yeah.
That's basically
Yeah.
it. It's an eternal quest for a curiosity, driven by curiosity. It's eternal quest for finding things out. In this case, it's mainly sports and sports performance and performance enhancement of athletes and
Yeah.
related people.
I would say that people encourage boundless curiosity, but I can say it can be a little bit of a curse too, because it leaves you never satisfied, and you
It's
always
true.
feel there's something bothering you.
Well, it's like performance itself, like athletics, of course, where I come from, or track and field. Even if the athlete and a few of my athletes broke world records, uh, that's not the end. That's not the final word you've spoken. You always want to go faster. There's no end. So that might be another comparison between myself
Yes.
as being an athlete or a coach. It never stops. There is no finish line, as a matter of fact.
No,
There is, and when you reach it, there's another one.
I find like as soon as I see a good the result that we were shooting for, I'm automatically looking at, okay, now what's next. I don't even take a moment to like enjoy it. I'm like, okay, now where's our next target?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Now,
and it could be a little bit maddening.
yeah. About one of my athletes, the athlete that I'm coaching for 4 years now, there's a book written about her, about her mom,
Oh
and
yeah.
my own contribution to their performances. And it's basically the same thing. If somebody breaks the world record, that's what you're aiming for. Somebody breaks the world record, becomes world champion. So, well, this is it. Nothing special. And then you continue and want to break the world record again, and once again repeat that championships and get that gold medal again and again. It never stops. It's a kind
Yeah,
of,
it's rinse and repeat,
as a matter
right?
of fact, it's human greed in an acceptable form.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
tell me about like I know you've been doing some some different stuff, some and newer stuff. Tell me about the training with your current the young lady. I can't remember her
Yeah.
name now.
Ronel is her name.
Renelle. Okay.
Ronel. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, she's doing fine. The only thing that sets her back that she is too smart to be an athlete. And what too smart means, if you have people with another smart, for them, let's say sports or athletics might be the only way to express themselves and to reach their goals. For her, if you're smart, you can go to the university, go and get your bachelor's, and now she's in the last weeks of getting her master's, and then maybe a PhD or something. So I prefer that she was not that smart. Her IQ would be a little less, so she could focus on sprinting.
Yeah.
But that's a temporary question. So her development is a little bit slower than expected. It's going forward steadily, but not that big,
Yeah.
sharp acceleration that athletes, which had nothing else to do. For other people, it's working out 1 or 2 hours a day and then having 23 hours to rest and to prepare for the next workout. For her, it's going to college and going to listen and prepare the exams and prepare this and prepare that. So, and then the traveling. And then on top of that, she also started her own little company,
Yeah.
which is doing very well. So that's another limitation for her to develop. As a matter of fact, in things are running very well. I published some of her workouts on Instagram. So Henk Kraaijenhof 5, my name, and then number 5. So you can see sometimes what we are doing, what kind of funny exercises or stupid exercises we do as a wrap up of the week of some drills or competitions or something. So that keeps me busy all the time. And when I'm not reading, this morning I went to the bookstore and I bought 3 books. So
Because you don't have
yeah.
enough. You don't have enough. I'm pretty sure. Right?
Never enough. Same greed. Never enough.
Okay, now, this is just a personal question. How well does that go over with your wife Verena when you buy new books?
Yeah.
How does that work?
She's, are you going to buy books today? I said, well, maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. If there's no interesting books, I won't buy them. If there's interesting books, sometimes I buy 8 books or something. And nowadays, books are pretty expensive. I mean, the price of books
it's gone crazy
through the roof. Yeah, ridiculous sometimes. And no, she doesn't have any problem with that.
she doesn't. My wife puts
she reads books as well. I mean, she has a huge library as well, not the same books,
Okay.
more like fiction books or history or
Yeah.
autobiography. So
Sure.
he appreciates reading. We spend a lot of time reading. That's basically it.
Okay.
So
So
there's
she
no problem
allows it.
there. No conflict there. Yeah.
I've got them. I've run out of spaces to put them, and so my wife is getting a little restrictive in that regard.
Absolutely. I have an office, and that office is full of books. It has its own room as a library. But when I stopped working at my company and quit this office, then I really have a problem. Yeah, then it's time for a bigger house or a garage or something.
Yeah, right. You got to have like a storage
I
unit.
really have
Yeah,
a problem. And the
yeah,
worst insult you can say, can you throw them away? You know what's
yeah,
in there. I
yeah.
mean, man, then I got really upset. I mean, throw my books away is like discarding your children. I mean, I
Exactly.
know
Just
where they
because I
are, I
read it
know
doesn't
what's
mean
in
I want to
there.
get rid of it.
So, yeah, no, that's impossible. Throwing away a book that breaks my heart.
Yes, yes. I'm the same way.
So,
She's like, you've already read the book. What do you need it for? Because it's kind of like men with their old T-shirts. They're like, no, I want to keep
yes,
them.
exactly. So,
It's comfortable.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Makes you feel
That,
better, right? It's just a sense of it's kind of like your blanket when you're a little kid. It's a source of comfort. Same
yeah.
exact situation. Same exact situation. So, what distance does she run?
Um, she has a company. Um, I have been working with adaptogens since the mid 1980s, early 1980s, I think. Adaptogens are substances of coming from Mother Nature. It could be plants, it could be animals, it could be minerals. But the main effect is that they help the body to adapt to adverse circumstances. Now or basically stress, mental or physical stress. They help you to adapt. So if you have no stress in your life, then adaptogen don't work for you that well. But if you have a lot of physical stress, like an athlete or mental stress, they reduce the stress response in a positive way and reduce the side effects of the stress response, the negative effects of the stress response. And they help you to widen the bandwidth in which you can operate without getting stressed or getting overboard. For instance, normally when you have under stress, you got your immune system is going down, you get those little blisters here,
Yeah.
or you catch a cold. And adaptogens, one of the things will prevent that. And not ergogenics, they don't help you to run faster, they help you to not lose time being sick or having a problem, a physical problem. So you can continue training after if you take them for 1 year. You say, hey, this year I didn't get the flu, or this year I had
Yeah.
less sick days. That's basically what it does. It helps you to repair injuries. It helps you to prevent injuries. So it's more in a preventive than in a therapeutic way. It's not a drug. I've been
I,
studying those things since an early age already. I wrote quite a few articles. I found an article from 1992, one from 1995, one from 1998, only about adaptogens. So they're quite exotic in the
yeah.
Western Hemisphere, but in the East, let me say China, Japan, and Ayurveda, and Russian physiology, you find a lot of work on adaptogens. Now, she found one peculiar that I found, basically, but she took it. She wrote a bachelor description about this one to be used for frail elderly. Because when you get older, you lose muscle mass, and then when
Yeah.
you fall down, you break a hip and you need surgery, and then bad things may happen. So if you fall less because you still have muscle mass, so this one works as a slight anabolic. As a matter of fact, not even slight. Research indicates that it's at least as strong as anabolic steroids. That's why the
Wow.
Russians used it before competition when they on an off period for anabolic steroids before competition because of the testing. They used it as an alternative and figured out it was better and had no side effects at all. So that's interesting. It has been used in folk medicine for many years, and she found this one. It's got it here.
Yeah.
Got a free sample.
Yes.
Flores
Yeah.
580 because we have 580 muscles in our body.
Yes.
So that's why it's 580. And it contains Raponticum cartamoides. That's a long Latin name for a big plant, 1 meter high or 3-4 feet high plant, which is pretty rare. It grows in altitude and it needs bad circumstances to grow. As a matter of fact, hot summers and very cold winters, and we don't have that in the US or maybe in Canada a little bit. But we don't have this in Europe, so you have to go to Siberia, or to where I get it from is Kazakhstan, from the Altai Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
With altitude, cold weather, and bad soil.
Yeah.
Infertile soil. So, and that's what it is. So it's very, very hard to get good quality. As a matter of fact, the estimation is by scientists in this field that 90% for what's on the market is crap, doesn't contain any bioactive substances. It doesn't do shit. You might find a plant, but there's nothing active in there because it was never challenged by nature to produce those substances, even if it's the same plant.
I had this explained or defined to me this way. You tell me if this sounds correct. That adaptogens grown in climates that are very harsh, whether, like you said, with all those different variables, and they had to adapt to thrive. They had to adapt to those circumstances. So those qualities that they developed to adapt, when ingested by the human, forced the human to adapt to this, like to become more resilient. So it's like a stress. It stresses the body. The substance does, so the body becomes more resilient to stress. Is that the right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Don't forget, plants are around for a lot longer time than we as humans or mammals are. And they had to adapt to very adverse circumstances. Remember meteors, ice times, and so on and so on and so on. And and also have to deal with a big enemy. It's a chemical warfare against insects. So the garlic doesn't produce this taste to spice our food. It produces this taste to wear off bugs and caterpillars and things like that which might eat it. So that's chemical warfare right there, and every plant is an unbelievable chemical plant, as a matter of fact. It produces 150 to sometimes 300 or 400 different components, of which we have no idea what they do. They're undiscovered still. We don't know the effects of it. Well, from garlic, you can say nobody ever died from garlic poisoning. So all in all, the combination of all those things won't harm you too much. Same for ginger or for orange or something. But some components might be very helpful for us, and there's more and more interest in healthcare because allopathic healthcare is reached basically its limits. You can see it with antibiotics. The germs adapt and build up resistance.
Right.
Now, for plants, this is impossible. If the plant would produce something that the insect would be resistant to, then the insect would eat the plant and the plant would no longer exist. So only the strong plants that would produce the right chemicals survive the attacks of the insects.
Yeah.
So that puzzles me. It's basically biology. It's an interaction between living organisms like mammals or animals or human beings or even athletes and the plants, which I think is a very interesting topic.
It is. In the allopathic world, especially here in the United States, as it relates to like what you said, antibiotics, is that primarily they're single delivery. They have a limited bandwidth, and the
single component.
Yes, single component. Whereas with a plant or a plant derived is this is how I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the chemistry for them is so complex that the pathogens can't ever figure them out. Like they figure out single delivery and then they mutate and then they become a stronger bug. Whereas when they're presented with a plant, the chemistry is so complex, it's not adaptable. You can't adapt to it.
Exactly. That's it.
Because it's that simple.
The human body and the human cell have many ion channels, many receptors, and so on and so on. So if you want to destroy that cell, let's say a cancer cell, and use one component, well, it's a lock it's a door with 20 locks. If you open one lock or close one lock, it's still not open or still not closed because there's 19 others. So if you deliver a single component, in the end, you have to have synergy and multi-target multi-target components, which are more one key that works on more locks at the same time.
Right.
So
That's what is fascinating with natural stuff, is that, and also with like the way that we train, like the natural stuff, the plants, the herbs, whatever, their chemistry is so complicated, and we don't know. Like I've heard this before too, that we don't even know everything that's in vitamin C, for example. We know that this is complex, but we don't know all of its items. We're not even close to it either, from what I understand.
Yeah, and then another, I would say, complicating or intriguing factor is that we think that molecules have a chemical effect only, so it's only chemistry, but it might not be, because of the protons, the neutrons, and the electrons spinning around this molecule. It's vibrating. Now, every molecule has a different vibration frequency.
Right.
So it might also be that the receptor is not only a key lock system where it locks on the receptor, but it might also be an antenna which responds to the vibration of the molecule. So that is more or less a new insight, which is not widely accepted yet.
Yeah.
But because we don't have the tools to figure it out. Like before the invention of the microscope, we didn't know what germs were doing. We couldn't see them. So yeah, all of a sudden you got sick by drinking water or whatever, or you got diarrhea. We have no idea where it comes from. And it was not generally accepted. And then you find a microscope and you see those things and think, hey, this might be it. And then you kill them with antibiotics, of course, or antiseptics. And then, okay, that could be something. So we're on the edge of what we know in this field. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
It's kind of a hobby of mine, co-op. It is rather far away from daily training, but it makes you understand about training as well. Training is basically a toxin, a poison.
Yes.
Producing lactic acid, producing all those substances that the body doesn't want you to produce, as a matter of fact.
Right.
But those substances help you to adapt at a certain dose, an optimal dose. And if you give too much, then you die, or then you get sick, or whatever. But if you have enough of them, then the body will adapt. It's always, can the body handle it or not? So that's it. If you can handle it, it's okay. If you cannot handle it, you destroy the cell, you destroy the body, you destroy the athlete, as a matter of fact. So the same principles are active here.
It's almost identical in the sense that the body is maybe the most, well, it's the most complicated thing in the world in terms of, as an organism.
Yeah.
And so then you're trying to force it to adapt. And the way that I explain it to an athlete is, I'm playing chess with your body. I'm trying to trick it. I'm trying to get it to do what I want it to do. But I'm not going to make it. You can't just bulldoze it to make it do what you want. You have to be intelligent and try to press the right button or to move the piece in the right place so that you get the response that you want from the body. And that it's much more cerebral. It's not about the physical as much as it is about trying to figure out how the body will respond to the stimulus that you give it.
Oh, it's very simple. We use it every day as a coach. Some new athlete comes in, we make him squat or weight 100 pounds. Hey, that's fine. If he can handle it, he's getting stronger. If you make him squat with 300 pounds, he might have a hernia or break his back or injure himself. So the optimal dosage, train as much as possible, not as necessary, not as much as possible, also applies to intensity, also applies to specificity, also applies to athletes. It's very, and also to, of course, to chemical components. It's very interesting.
It is, and that's what makes this so, for me anyway, interesting, is that the body is kind of like the chess computers, like Deep Blue. The Deep Blue kept adjusting, to Kasparov, right?
Yes.
And your body's the same way. You're never going to totally outsmart it. You constantly are, because it's learning while you're learning.
Yes, absolutely.
It's learning. Yeah. It's learning all of your tricks.
Yeah.
So then you got to come up with better tricks.
That's why your training has to be more intense or more volume all the time because the body adapts to it. So that is the continuous change you're looking for. But
Yeah.
it's not always easy to monitor that and to have an eye on this. If it's going too much or too little, you don't improve. Too much,
Yeah.
and you destroy the athlete or destroy tissue. That's not, and you get injuries. Not what you're looking for.
Right.
So that's the
Right.
challenge out there, and then this challenge keeps me busy for almost 40 years or something, 45 years already.
Well,
I
I'm
just
glad
continue that.
I'm glad you've been doing it because I've learned a lot because of your curiosity. It's helped me learn quite a bit. So with the young lady, Ronell or Raynell?
Ronel, yeah,
Ronell.
yeah,
Okay.
with double L.
Double L. Okay. Is she planning to? Does she have a plan of like competing at the national European level or Olympic level?
Yeah, absolutely. Olympic
Okay.
level is her aspiration, her big dream, but this year it's too early. And
Yeah.
once again, I was kind of stupid by she asked me, Henk, should I go for full time for training or should I pick up studies at the University Human Movement Sciences at the Free University here? And I, stupid enough as a coach, I said, well, I think you should study because if something happens, whatever it happens, you find a boyfriend or you get injured or you get sick, then at least you have a university degree.
Yeah.
It becomes more and more difficult to, well, just like athletics, you're on your best somewhere between 20 and 30, roughly speaking. Um, but you don't go to the university when you're 40 years old anymore. So if you can do it, and for some athletes, I said, no, stop studying, stop working. You need time to recover and everything. And it's a burden. And for some athletes, it's a burden not to do anything, to sit in the house, lay on the bed and stare at the ceiling or
Yeah.
whatever they do in those
Right.
20 empty hours where you don't train. So, yeah, I advised her to pick up a study, and now I'm slowing down her development. And then I was the one say, okay, she felt sorry for her parents paying for the studies, paying for the apartment she has here, a small one-bedroom apartment. So she felt guilt. She said, okay, you have to be financially independent, so why not start a company? So at 22 years old, she started her own company.
Wow.
And pretty professional. So that's
Yeah.
doing very good work, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I helped her a
Absolutely.
little bit, but of course it takes time to, to fill the social media, to do all
Yeah.
the research and to put it on the website and everything, and to contact people and to ship the shipments and everything. She gets help with that, but still it's something on the back of her mind. So I developed to
It's
slow
not.
down by
It's.
myself.
I mean, I've been involved in that business, so I understand. There's a lot to it.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
simple. Not simple at
No,
all.
no, definitely
E-
not. Definitely not. No.
So I want to remind everybody listening: go online and look at Flourish 580. We know the quality's
Yeah,
there.
Floris.nl, of course, it's Netherlands.
.nl.
I
.nl.
think the website is also FLRSH.
Okay.
Why? Because, of course, Flourish has a floor polish company called Flourish.
Ah,
So
yeah, yeah,
to,
yeah, 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 yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So we want to make sure that we support her doing something really valuable and productive for the athlete. So we want to make sure that we support that in any way we can. So you guys, you saw the package. Go look
yeah.
it up.
Well,
It's Henk approved, and that's gonna be one of the few things in the world that are Henk approved.
no, yeah, but this is something I fully back up because it's tested 4 times. It tested where it came from. It tested when it came to Holland. The company tested it, and it's tested by WADA or approved by WADA also. So athletes don't have to be afraid it's something that is forbidden because the same component which is in here you can find in quinoa and you can find in spinach, but just a
Oh,
minute amount.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a little to have a strong effect. Although Popeye was pretty strong, if you see the bicep of Popeye was pretty good because of his spinach.
Right,
So,
right, right, right.
so
Now, did you trained her mother right back at was it in the 90s?
80s, basically
80s
80s, from 81 to 96,
to
with a
96.
break of 4-year break in
Okay.
between
Did she break the world
because I
record
went
in the
home out.
60?
Yeah, Yeah, she broke the world record in the 60.
Okay, and then Ronell, is she running the 60 as well?
Yeah, but she's a different type. I mean, she has only 50% of the genes. Her dad spoiled it.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. She's tall too, isn't she?
She's taller. She's taller than Nelly. Nelly was the short, stocky, very muscular, still very muscular, very, very strong legs. I mean, it's all muscle.
Yeah.
So perfectly for the 60 meters, while Ronel is slimmer, taller, more fragile, doesn't have that much muscle. I tested the muscle fiber types, and Nelly had 80% fast twitch, and Ronel has a little bit more than 60% fast twitch. So still impressive numbers, but more a 100, 200 meter type than a pure 60 meter type.
That's what I was thinking. I thought she looked like she was built more like a 200 meter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
She looked like. Now,
yeah.
with Nellie's fiber type, I don't want to get too far off on a rabbit hole, but with Nellie's fiber type, was 80% after training, or was that in the beginning? Genetics.
It was in the beginning. It was rather in the beginning when she started training seriously. Yeah, she was born that way. That's absolutely true. Because if you do it after training, you don't know if she's born with it or she has it because of training. You don't know. We know we can change muscle fiber type, but we don't know to what extent. It could be 2%, it could be 10 or 15%. We have no idea because nobody started when they are very young or babies.
Yeah, so they did say there was They did say that there was a big change. Was it Gunther Werner that they said, he went from 40 to like 60 or something like that?
What do you mean?
You remember when I think it was with Gunther Werner, the German thrower.
No, Swiss shot putter, Werner Gunther.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, the shot putter. Well, that's the beauty of the human body. We are able to compensate things. So he didn't have so much fast twitch fibers.
Yeah.
And he jumped 7 meters almost. He ran 100 meters in 11 seconds. He did the high jump with his body, a pole vault of a shot putter of nowadays. See him high jump. He almost jumped 7 feet from a 5-stride approach. So he was very explosive. You see his films, he's very explosive. But he had only somewhere around 40% fast twitch fiber. But he compensated because selectively he increased those fast twitch fibers like crazy. They were 3 times bigger. So that's interesting. He didn't increase his slow fibers, which would slow him down, and he increased selectively his fast fibers. And you can see it when he quit. You see those fast fibers, these tremendous fast fibers, coming down to normal size again 3 years after he quit. So you can see it was by training and not by genetics, because then they would have stayed big.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And there's of course other qualities in the muscle, the fascia, the elasticity of the muscle, the stiffness of the muscle, the regulation of the neuromuscular system. That's all also important. So the muscle fiber type tells you a lot, but not everything. It only tells you part of the story, like the engine of a car, how many cylinders tells you part of the story, but it doesn't tell you everything about the car.
I think the thing that it tells you here in the United States, now Olympic athletes are a little bit of a different animal in the sense that genetics are going to play a role, an important role, obviously.
Absolutely.
You're not going to start out at 14 seconds and then break the world record in 100 meters. But I do think that like below Olympic level, you correct me if I'm wrong, but below Olympic level, like professional soccer, professional, basketball, let's say, those guys are genetically gifted, but that's something that can be caught. To a better degree, not totally, but you could go from a medium level to a high level over the course of years of intelligent training.
Yeah, you can. It's always a very simple thing, but just to explain for the layman, it's people say, well, some people are donkeys and some people are racehorses. But in real life, there is no race between donkeys and racehorses. There's races between racehorses and there are races between donkeys. And always there's a faster donkey and always there's a faster racehorse.
Right.
So that's the genetic limitation. Genes in the end, and we don't know much about genes. Again, human beings and also coaches have this idea that this in the pharmacology, you have this one single component, right? We just talked about it. We have this one single test, lactic acid test, or the jump test, or the muscle fiber composition that will tell you everything, and it just doesn't. The human body is way more complex and way more factors involved.
Yeah.
If you only look at one test, then you ignore all the other factors involved, and then you don't go very far. So a more holistic approach, look at every angle: biochemistry, biomechanics, also psychology, nutrition, physiology, you name it. You have to study everything to look at all the possible factors that you can change that will adapt to your training, not only to one factor.
Exactly, and that's the misconception of chasing just fiber type or just chasing one. Yeah. It's like the silliness of chasing strength as a component of athletic ability. It's just one factor.
Yeah, what you see now is force plates.
Yeah.
What does it tell you? Almost nothing. It's interesting, but it bears no relevance to what you do on the track or what you do on the soccer pitch. It bears no relevance whatsoever. It's again this blown up one single factor which can tell you basically everything. No, it only tells you what you're testing and no more than that.
Yeah,
so your blood pressure or your temperature tells you about your temperature. Your blood pressure doesn't tell you if you're a healthy person or not. Your temperature, it might be okay, but you might be a very sick person. So you might go into the wrong direction. And the diagnosis determines the therapy. Therapy can only as good as the diagnosis is. If the diagnosis is wrong or not adequate, you will give a wrong therapy or non-adequate therapy or non-adequate training. So look at the whole spectrum, please.
I agree. I've been confronted with that a little bit over the last couple of years, and the force plate to me, it could tell you how you're doing. You know, like, are we improving some of these qualities, right? But does it direct everything? No. I mean, I think that it could tell you a few things. Are we moving a few things in the direction that we think we're moving them in? I think that could be nice for that. But the reality is
only those things, but not all the things. This is the problem. I used to have a force plate. One of the first simple, not a Kiesler, the very expensive one, simple force plate from the Muscle Lab. Used it in the 1980s already. It's a simple. It was a force plate which you can measure the vertical force output, but also the projection of the center of mass on the force plate. You know, you can see if you stand on one leg how your center of mass is moving. Close your eyes and it's moving in 1 minute or something. So you can measure all those things, and I never found it a very useful tool to determine performance or predict performance or explain performances. It just measured what it measured, most of the time a very static thing. Yeah, if you jump on a force plate, you would see how much you, as a matter of fact, and how high you jump. You can do the same thing with a simple jump mat. But does it really predict how fast you're going to run? No, it's just okay. You're explosive or you're not. It doesn't. It doesn't. So
it doesn't. It doesn't. Like I said, limited information. If it's something that you need, I get it. But yeah, I would never use. I've never used one, and I don't know if I ever would need it. You know, I don't see it being something that would be absolutely necessary.
Exactly
to the training. Okay, so that brings me to your thoughts. You know, you talk about some of the things that other people like are misplaced. For you personally, what's changed for you? Like, you know, like in the last 10, 15 years or whatever, you know, I had a conversation with Anatoly Bondarchuk a while back, and he said, my mind has changed about every 7 to 10 years, sometimes sooner, sometimes a little later. And I asked him, I said, did your mind change the last time? And he said it was like in the 2000s about certain things, like I'm going to say not totally fundamentally, but more fundamental kind of ideas. And he said you should always be changing. You know, he said a good coach is always updating and changing and kind of looking at things. Not that he's all over the place, but he's improving. For you, what has that been? What's that been like?
No. For speaking for myself only, I tend to disagree, because if you do things completely different, that means you've been doing things wrong in the past.
Right.
Because your performance was just as good as they are now. Because the improvement is marginal. If it was this of a dramatic change that how can you perform if you made all those mistakes before what is considered to be a mistake? There are hardly any fundamental changes, just small adaptations.
And
Also in training.
I have to say, you and I talked about this off camera. He doesn't speak English very well, so my interpretation of what he said might be a little bit screwy there. But I think basically basically what he was saying was that I'm always looking at and scrutinizing what I'm doing, and my mind is changing. You know, like I'm learning something or applying something differently. And I think that's kind of where I don't think he just threw the baby out with the bathwater, but yeah, I learned. He's like for example, with Sadiq, would he train Sadiq differently today? And he said, yeah, I'd do some things differently than I did with him back then.
Yeah, but I think the fundamental things would still be there. The very fundamental thing would still be there.
Yeah,
you would
exactly.
add new exercises, leave other exercises out. But that's normal because I do exercises now that I did not invent 10 years ago. I invented them myself, and I didn't do them 10 years ago. I do them now. But that's not a fundamental change. There are quite a few exercises that are out of your vocabulary, just like words in your vocabulary that you don't use anymore if you don't speak it. So every year there's a 5 to 10% change. Not always an improvement because the still training is a biological experiment in which you can predict what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're looking for very minor changes. So one time the weather is, in the whole season, the weather is shit. It's raining and cold and headwind. So the overall performance this year wasn't as good. Even if your training was better, it did not express itself in a better performance at all. So does it mean your training was wrong? No, there could be other factors involved. Your athlete might have been sick or might move to another school or move. There's many factors involved.
Lot of things.
So that doesn't mean your training is wrong or that they have to change something. Sometimes you're on the right way, it just doesn't know where you are, and it doesn't show that you're on the right way. But just around the corner, that's, oh yes, we were here. Approach it through another road or something. So, yeah, anyhow, there's not too many fundamental innovations. There are many innovations with artificial intelligence and more in the technological sense. There's more and sensitive sensors that you can wear and monitor everything in the body, but it all comes down to very simple things. We have more data than ever. We can have more data, but it only adds to more confusion because you don't know which data are relevant and significant. So for me, many people are confused. There's more looking, because of the complexity, people trying to get a grip on that one factor that they understand very well, and more than ever, like we just said before, leave all the factors involved, leave them out, because you have the specialists now.
Yeah,
the guys are specialists in biomechanics and know how your little finger should be and how your knee angle should be. Doesn't care anything about nutrition or about psychology or about all the other factors. So the more specialist you get, the more tunnel vision you produce as well. And this is what's happening right now. And tunnel vision seldom leads to innovation, as a matter of fact. There's not too many things that are fundamentally changed from the 19th. We know a little bit more, but the main innovation has to come from training, not from technology. Of course, I don't use a mechanical stopwatch. I use an electronic stopwatch right now, but that's not an innovation. It still takes time in the same way. And if I'm a lousy timekeeper, then I will be lousy with a mechanical stopwatch and with an electronic stopwatch.
Exactly. And this is going to lead into one of my other questions. So you would say that I shouldn't have said fundamental change, but you've innovated since 10 years ago or 15 years ago. You've innovated and maybe used new exercise that you didn't use before.
Yeah.
You found value.
But they added to the vocabulary. It's not something new that as exercise I leave out. The thing is also a philosophical thing. Suppose you are an architect and you build a house, and then you build a house and you build a foundation and the walls and then the roof and everything and the windows and the doors, and then okay, it looks like a beautiful house, but 5 years later you said the house isn't beautiful.
Yeah.
But at that moment you build it, it was beautiful. That your vision on the house changes, or the neighborhood changes, it doesn't blend in anymore, or that you got fed up with it. But basically, it must have been a good house. Otherwise, why would you develop it in this moment in time? You can break it down again and start a new house, but how smart is that?
Right. I what I think, like, speaking for myself personally, it's typically what it has. The changes for me have been, I just understood something better that I already had heard or
Yes.
knew.
Yeah.
But
Why?
it's
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like life in general. Like when your parents would tell you something, you're like, you know, you didn't listen or you didn't understand what they were saying until you're in that position, and then you're like, oh, you know, I didn't look at that. My viewpoint or my perspective on that wasn't correct. I knew it,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how to
Yeah.
apply it, or I didn't understand the perspective or the all of the nuance. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
nuance in what we do, and you don't understand the nuance of certain things.
Exactly.
And so the changes for me, anyway, have come about because of me having a better handle on the nuance of something, of the art of training. Where you're looking at the situation and it doesn't follow the rules that you learned, and now you have to innovate. You're like, okay, how do I manage this for this athlete, in the way that makes the most sense? And for me, that's kind of what has been the changes have been, there, where I just understood something. Like I probably read it 20 years ago and I didn't understand it. That's the problem for me, anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like the same exercise worked 10 years ago, worked miracles, and it still works miracles right now. The fact was, at that time, you didn't understand, or you had the wrong understanding. You didn't understand it. You supposed it worked because A, and now you figured out, hey, it works not because of A, but because of B. That's
Yeah,
all. But it still works. And that's the most important thing as coaches. We're not as much concerned about why it works. It helps to understand it,
yeah,
to improve on it, or to say,
yeah.
it might not
Right.
work at all. But the interesting thing, if it works at all.
Yeah. I think that that's the crux. So now this leads into my other question that I had. I've heard this lately, and I think you probably have heard it maybe every now and then too. There's because of this newer generation, a newer
Yeah,
group, and a lot of specialists, like what you're talking about, especially
yeah,
people who are specialized in data, production, collection, all the different things, measuring, and all that.
yeah.
Now they have gotten a little bit in the United States, what we would call too big for their britches. They've gotten bigger in their mind than what is in reality, and they now, I've heard some of them dismiss the Russian stuff as being old and antiquated. Now there's new stuff, and they said
Yeah.
that they can't let that stuff go. My position has been, I don't think you understood the Russian stuff to begin with. So how have you
Exactly.
advanced on it when you didn't even know what it was? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay. Um, Number one, I think you're absolutely right. The fact that it's invented a long time ago, like, or discovered a long time ago, the apple still falls from the tree in a vertical way. Even if somebody discovered that and started thinking about it hundreds of years ago, so that is meaningless. Knowledge is timeless. Many things that were known by the Egyptians or Assyrians or Babylonians already about the stars and everything still apply now. Why is it old and discarded? So especially when it comes to data, data should be relevant and significant. Well, the Russians had data, a lot of data were relevant and significant in a way they could apply it. Now there's a lot of data which are just data. Data is not the same like information, it's just basically numbers. And
Yeah,
numbers are meaningless if you don't interpret them well and if you don't see the story in those numbers, don't see
yeah,
which direction you should run. Um, it's like a GPS. The numbers don't mean anything if you don't know where the hell you are and where you're going to. And the numbers are just numbers. That's numbers are numbers. And a lot of people got how do you call it? Got interested in this because it's easy. You can sit on your laptop and find some cool formulas or whatever. But in the end, it's nothing. I could write a book now by pushing a few buttons and write a book. But number one, it's not my book. It's all the information that already existed, condensed and reformulated, but it's not my book. It's a combination of millions of other books, but it's not my book. It's not my idea. behind it. So the same with data, basically. There's data diarrhea, I always call it. It's a lot of shit, and you don't do anything with it. Get rid of it as fast as possible if you don't know what to do with it. So the bridge between data and real performance improvement, that's not that's a very long bridge. A very long bridge. So that's most people never get to the end of it. You just sometimes I get phone calls or mail. Henk, can you help us a little bit because we have this new toy or tool. Can you help us? We have a lot of data, but we don't know what the hell we're looking at.
We don't know what it is.
I understand that very well. So we say to measure is to know. No. It's the other way around. To know is to measure.
Yeah.
You have to know what you expect from the measurements. What do you want to find? And then you might find it, and not look at the huge Excel spreadsheet, all the numbers there, and so by some magic something comes out all of a sudden. It's not like this. It's not like this. But
you
you can
know what you're looking for.
People who are too stupid to do something else, to look further than their nose. I can understand the magic in the
I think that the data collection and the technology has been the new shiny thing to keep people's attention, and it allows people to be valuable who otherwise didn't produce value. That they weren't producing. And I this is the way I think. I think a lot of it's been a diversion from producing results on the track for you. Like, for example, does she run faster or not? That's all that matters. Nobody cares at the end of the day unless she runs faster.
Exactly. It's very pragmatic and very limited, but it's the only truth there is. If you're running faster or not.
That was the whole point you got started.
In the wrong way. I see a lot of people running in the wrong way because the data tell them. So they follow the data and don't go anywhere anyway, because they're standing on the wrong foot.
They can. What they do is they work to validate the data and the data collection as opposed to validating the method you're using to get her faster, because that's all that matters.
Exactly. It became an aim in itself. It became a target in itself to collect data and not to the transfer to performance improvement, because there are a few steps to take there.
It's what you mentioned earlier. Like there's different targets, and the only target that matters is what we started for, which was in your case for her to run faster. It's interesting to see because as you and I both know, the old generation of the Soviet scientists are dying, or they're in the very twilight.
All the people, and there's hardly any new ones coming, especially now when Russia is very much isolated. The motivation to go and do sports is less and less because you can never compete internationally anymore. So that's kind of sad. And all the old generation, we did tremendous work. We did a foundation because nothing else came up since Verkhoshansky, Zachursky, Matveyev, Bondarchuk. Nothing new in the science of training was invented. Nothing shocking or no revolution. There's a small evolution, mainly in technology, but that's all.
There's not really a lot of new stuff.
Fundamentally new. They were the fundamentals. And even after 50 years and have a much better technology, we didn't come up with any breakthrough in training. So that means they did a good job at that time.
There haven't been any breakthroughs. And I think that's one of the things that is a misconception, especially in the United States, is that there's been no progress since 1991, at least. When the Soviet Union fell apart, nothing new has come forward that has been groundbreaking. We're using the same ideas. The only problem is that we don't understand the ideas very well, and I would dare say the coaches of the 80s and 90s that were Americans actually had a better appreciation for the Soviet approach back then than we do now. So we've actually gotten worse.
Well, also because it's part of history now. Like I said, the old scientists passed away or are very old, don't publish a lot anymore. They used to speak a different language. They have a different frame of mind, thinking about training and performance than we have in the West. So that also doesn't narrow the gap between us and them. But to say it was usually old-fashioned, What does it mean? Most of the books, the classics, are still as valuable and as valid now as when they were written at that time. If you read Matveyev or Verkhoshansky, I can't mention any book that comes close to that. Most of the time, it's just condensing, taking a lot of information from articles and from other scientists, but not really an original idea, a fundamental and original idea. That just does not exist. So it's fine. The criticism is fine. So if you don't like it, don't read it. So that's good for me and for you.
No, I'll take it. And I keep publishing it because I still haven't seen anything else out there that is more advanced. I haven't seen anything that's better.
No, technically, yeah, probably yes. More data, more things to back up. But don't forget a lot of new developments, like the whole development at the time with the omega wave.
Yeah,
was based on systems thinking, systems physiology, Bayesian networks. It's new. Also, Alter Bias his information is very old. Bayesian networks and everything. Was invented a long time ago. Don't say it has to be discarded, but you use it on a daily basis. Don't say that plyometrics or jumping is useless because that's the foundation of explosiveness. Still, it doesn't matter where you come from. So, and that was discovered or basically elaborated by Verkhoshansky a long time ago.
60 years ago.
You can only speak when you can come up with something significantly and fundamentally new and originally new yourself. Otherwise, you have no right to speak about the Russian scientists. I think their contribution is still great. Even if we don't have only maybe half of the information they have, many things are still laying there unpublished or nobody knows about that. The information is just disappearing somehow.
I will tell you, actually, I've got 6 books that are unpublished that I still have that are in Russian that I got to get out. I'm working on that were, originally written there. And I'm actually going to publish a book by Zatsiorsky later this year that he wrote 60 years ago in the 60s, Motor Ability of Athletes. It never made it into the English language.
Exactly. So there's so much still.
and
even if nothing new comes up, it's enough to feed us for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So, as always, I love talking to you because I learn something new all the time, and I always you help my view, like the way I look at things, kind of look at it from a fresher point of view. So I love this as much personally for me as it is for the people who listen, because I like to learn and listen to kind of what you're thinking or what direction your mind's going in, with training and with the nutritional stuff as well. Anything else new that you got going on that you'd like to mention? And by the way, plug everything. We want to plug the Flourish, and then and I think you're doing you're doing an annual seminar too. What months do you hold that in?
Not yet, because I was traveling too much and still planned on traveling even more, as a matter of fact. So that's not yet. It will be. I think I'll shift to next year because the time is really short for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep on looking for the effect of psychedelics, legal psychedelics for performance enhancement for athletes who have something like a mental block. We used to use hypnosis to control people who sabotage themselves. The deeper layers of our consciousness, as a matter of fact, which might limit athletes as well. My friends and myself are looking for ways to optimize that. It's getting more popular. Use of psychedelics should be in good hands, of course, with proper products and with proper guidance. But to open up once again, this whole thing about the brain is coming up again. First, it was all muscle and biomechanics, and now the whole thing about, well, there's a mental part to it too, a psychological part, or say cognitive part, an emotional part as well into performance. And that's something that was ignored the last 10, 15 years. It was all about data, about biomechanics,